you're very welcome to another episode of Paul Plays Shenzhen I. Now what we're doing is Haunted Doll for this episode, and what that is it's embedding a little sort of sound chippy thing in these dolls, unbeknownst to everyone. Well, I'm not going to spoil the plot. Anyway, suffice to say, and we also need, so hopefully this is working, hopefully you can see this, we need these are the sound effects which we need for the thing it says in the email. So let us get on with it. Open design. Right, so we have one of these scratched up chips. It did say something about they found some old chips somewhere that we could make use of. So random is a simple input connected to a random generator, which I'm presuming is this. Speaker is a simple output. When a value of 1 is randomly generated, play the sinister giggle, blood-curdling cry, and look in the supplemental section of the manual for audio data that Carl found for these sound effects. And here they are. There's sinister giggle, and there is blood-curdling cry. Oh! And as I'm recording this, it's getting quite close to Halloween, so which is kind of good. Right. So what we have is, obviously we have our trusty MC 4000s, and we need some way of storing these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 of them. And what we have opened up now are these. This is the 100P14, which is a RAM chip, which you can read and write to. But this is a ROM chip, a read-only memory, which can be read for, entered values in now and then read from by the program. So what I'm going to try and do is, if I have 2 of these, right, so imagine we have the random number coming from here and going in like that. So both of these chips can then see, so this one's job would be to play sound 1, say this one's job would be to play sound 2, because they both have the data. I suppose you could do it slightly differently, where one sort of said to the other, where no, you see, these guys can only connect to we'll do it like this. I wonder if there's some way like one of these chips could talk to that or that, but there doesn't seem to be any addressing mode on it, so I am not 100% sure how that would or wouldn't work. Anyway, let's not get into it at the time being. So let's say this guy's job is to play sound 1, this guy's job is to play sound 2, and they both are attached to their data bank. And what we're going to try and do for this one is see what happens if we attach 2 chips to the one output, which I have never done before. So if I was to do that, they're both talking to that. This guy needs a bridge to get over that. Right. So they both get their random number in on P0. They both do their sound output on P1. This one X0 is the address line. And this one X1 is, so they have their address and data lines reversed. Like in theory, could we do... This guy's getting his address is on X0. So if I was to connect that across there. Now they're not reversed, are they? They're both got their 0 pin is their address line. Yeah, so that looks pretty symmetrical. Right. So what the first thing we're going to do is we have to get some of this data from this spreadsheet. So the first thing we need is sinister giggle 18041. 18041. Sorry, this is a bit tedious. 1441. 1441. 697454. 697454. 271940. And I did get a glimpse of the last one, and it was 75. So, roughly, what would the code look like to do this? Let's have a quick look and see if there's anything more we can learn from the output. So, I presume that's where this is this random data coming in, but we're looking for this one, which must be the first time we get a 1 out of it, which is what it said. If you get a random 1, then what we're going to do is test if equal P0 and 1. And let's say it was equal. Let's just jump to something we're going to call the end. And on the end, let's sleep 1. So what we've got here is the room to write the stuff when we find a 1. No, jump, no, like that. Do it so that we if it's not equal, yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. What am I thinking about? Sometimes the syntax can still be a little confusing. Right, so we're in the loop here. So what do we need to do? Let's just make sure we reset the address line. So the address line is on x0. So move 0 to x0. And then we want to move, say, a data, which is coming in on x1. And we want to move that to P1. And that will have incremented it. And that address is 0. So after it's incremented, we want to say test if equal, say, if we got here, that'll be 13. And we need to test if the address line, which is on x0. Test if the address line has got to 13. If it hasn't, we want to jump back to our loop. So let's call this loop here. And we want to sleep 1. Right. Okay, so this is the first thing that is not really obvious, is that this speaker should be at 50, not 0. And what we've done here is left the last one high. Whatever value was the last one we did, which I presume was a 75, is it? Yeah. So let's solve this bit first. In theory, if we actually have a spare value. If we stuck a 50 on the end, and okay, so it won't go to 14, it'll be back there, so it would be 0, I believe. There. Right, that looks pretty good. Right, so, okay, now, I think then, I mean, because that's, we haven't got the start right. So let's do one of these commands. Move 50 to P1. So in the last, I don't know if you saw that in the last episode, if you or maybe just jumped into one, in one of the previous emails we got, it said there's a couple of instructions that weren't in the manual and they were given to you as an email, sort of, I don't know, 10 or 11-ish puzzles into the game. One of them is using this @ sign to make a line only run once. Right, I think the next thing to do is then let's try and get the second sound effect in, because that's a bit boring job. So we need blood curdling cry 16, 36, 42. 16, 36, 42. 14, 10, 58. $176.26. $28.70.80. What was it? 42, was it? I think I saw 42. Might have been 42. And again, let's use the same trick as before. We're going to stick an extra 50 in the end because we'll need it there, and hopefully Control C, Control V. We don't need both of them to set this one, so I'm going to remove that. Hopefully these pins are the same. Okay, this guy needs to be looking for 2 for the blood curdling cry, so that needs to change to that. Right. So what looks like it's happening now is the first one gets printed out, the second one. But when it comes to do this one again, so what exactly has gone wrong here? This is trying to play this one here, expected 16. They are right. Okay, so what it looks like is happening first of all is that this pin isn't going below 50. And then presumably that's because we've put 50 on it from this one. We need to cut some of the code out of this. I think that's the first thing we need to do. So do we need, because we go to 14, which is in effect broken back to 0, do we actually need that line? Possibly not. because we always use all the we never have sort of brought it down to sort of there and now need to reset it. We've always used all 14, including the 50 at the end. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. The two lines we have are the same, are these two sleep ones. Now, can we cleverly stop using, replace, just have one sleep one line, but by using the minuses and the pluses, can we get it? Okay, so let's just think about this. If I wanted to rewrite this like that, plus jump loop. So I only want to jump. So what I'm doing is test if equal x0 and 0. So if I replace that with a greater than, because I've changed that to a plus. Yes, I think so. So now, in theory, let me just think about this for a second. We jump up here to E, but with the negative bits, the negative test set. So what I'm proposing to do is do that. E, sleep 1, and remove that. So for the loop here, we don't care, we're doing this loop here. Having an extra label in it is kind of irrelevant to us. That label there, E colon, doesn't affect us at all. We're still doing the test, the sleep, and on the plus jump, we jump back to loop. However, we can also get to E from here, but then we've got this negative set. So we'll jump to E here, sleep, but because plus isn't set, because the last test failed getting here, that should work. So that has indeed given us our two lines. So what I would like to do is I need to just rewrite this one here. So this gets rewritten as test greater than. This sleep gets the label on it. That gets deleted. And that gets a plus on it. I'm still not quite sure what's going on here. I think the reason we're seeing the 50 here is because this one is outputting the 50 and these values are lower than it. So that's what I want to stop next. We'll stop that next and see what happens. Now I have the lines free. So before I test So what I'm proposing to do is, when we start off, this guy puts 50 on the bus or on the pin, and that holds it high for here. Whoever last outputted a sound leaves the 50 on it, and it stays at 50. But if you've last outputted a sound, and now it's the other guy's chance. I mean, if you've last outputted the sound, then it's your chance to go again. Obviously, your pin will go up and down and do it. But if the last guy, if you're not the same chip outputting the sound as the last time, you need to get rid of it. So to do that, what I'm proposing to do is do a check for the other chip's code. Test is equal P02. And if we did that, move 0 to P1. So like, if I know now the other person, not the other person, these are chips, aren't they? Why am I calling them people? If I know the other chip is about to output a sound, I want to kill it. So on this one, I'm going to do the opposite. Test if equal P0 and 1. Move 0 to P1. So that's looking pretty good. We fixed this problem here, which was that obviously this is what happens, how the game handles if you have two outputs in common. The person who's writing a voltage or a pin out or whatever you want to call it to it, which is higher, is the one that supersedes. So that kind of makes sense, yeah. Now, what has this gone wrong? It expected 70. Actual 80. So 26, 28, 80. Did I mess up? 26, 28, 70, 80, 42. I did mess up. Hang on. Keep an eye on this again. Okay, so that's looking reasonable, except this guy didn't leave the 50. I'm not sure what's gone wrong here now. We're not getting this after almost just one beat. Right, no, it should have just stayed at 50. Yeah, what am I thinking? I'm thinking it should be playing on a sound, but it shouldn't be. I'm getting all confused here in my head. Sorry, guys. Right. What's happening is it plays the first sound, leaves it on, but for some reason, so we'll spin up to there and just have a look and see what's gone wrong with this. So here we come, we're moving and we're about to move the 50. We can see the 50 here. And it gets that right. So test equal right. I've forgotten a plus here on this move. That's all. What I've done here is this can be quite tricky to find, can't they? When I was copying this code down, I'm always, so basically this guy couldn't hold the 50 that it had produced earlier. Right, I'm going to stop calling them guys, girls and people. They're chips, but let's continue on. Yes, and we are right. Fabulous. Wow, that was a little tricky. And again, a big chunk of the trickiness and the thinking comes from trying to minimize the code. So that's not bad. Again, I'm not gonna get obsessive about these. Right, so let's have a quick recap of what we did. We had this random number. We've used 2 of these MC4000s. Like, I wonder, could you write it a little differently where there's only one of these has the sort of code for writing and playing sounds, and the other one decides where you're getting the data from. What I'm thinking about that is like this one, you'd replace one of these with one of these 4-way bus ones. It could then use an address bus to get to this, an address bus to get to this as 2 of its pins, a shared data bus coming back for a 1/3 of its pins, and you'd still have another X bus free to communicate with the initial chip. So basically this guy would say this chip would say something like, it would send either a 1 or a 2 depending on whether it wanted sound effect 1 or 2. So this chip would just wait here until it got a 1 or a 2. If it got a 1, it knows that it needs to start blasting from address bus 1, otherwise it blasts from address bus. Does that work? Can you do a shared data bus? I think, no, you can't, because if you share the data bus, then they'll both be, look, why am I'm delaying you. I don't need to delay you. We've seen this one. I can speculate about craziness of other things, but anyway, that's my attempt at this. It's not brilliant, but it is, and my goodness, that was tricky, and there was no lines left, but at least we use an @ sign, so that's a bonus. So thank you for watching this. If you did enjoy it, please drop a like. If you haven't yet, you could consider subscribing to the channel or not. And see you again soon when we'll be doing more of this great little puzzle game from Zachtronics called Shenzhen I. Thanks again for watching. Bye now.